The O'Reilly Factor's on tonight.
An estimated 90 people, 90 of the Assyrian Christians, were taken by ISIS, many of them women and children.
The ISIS savages continued their reign of terror while a cowardly world stands by and watches. Girls as young as 8 years old being raped, Christians being mutilated and murdered, and Muslims who differ with ISIS being slaughtered as well. Tonight we'll continue our reporting on a monstrous situation.
Collectively, they're getting conned out of millions of dollars every month. It all starts with a phone call.
John Stossel has endured attacks for his reporting many times. Tonight we'll tell you why some in the media despise Fox News.
My tastes are very singular. You wouldn't understand.
Enlighten me then.
Also ahead, a University of Illinois student charged with crimes patterned after 50 Shades of Grey. Is it legal on that case? Caution. You are about to enter the no-spin zone. Factor begins right now. Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. The ISIS atrocities continue as a cowardly world does little. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Perhaps as many as 90 Christians in Syria have been taken hostage by the ISIS jihadists. We should all pray for those people who may very well be beheaded or burned alive. Also, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has issued a report that says the following. ISIS atrocities include rapes, slavery, trafficking of women and children, forced recruitment of children, killings of civilians, and kidnappings. The UN agency says young girls are being forced into marriages, young boys being trained as jihadi fighters. We've seen video of that, and it is appalling. These young boys are being brainwashed, trained to kill. They are powerless to stop ISIS from abusing them. Meanwhile, the world dithers. There is no organized campaign on the ground to stop the atrocities or to defeat the ISIS savages. What a disgrace. In an excellent bit of reporting from northern Iraq, NBC correspondent Richard Engel interviewed two women who escaped from the ISIS abusers.
ISIS is reviving the barbaric tradition of the slave trade, proudly showing its fighters in this ISIS video discussing the Yazidi women they're about to buy. We showed Farida the video. She instantly recognized the men. All of the girls were screaming and crying because they didn't want to go with them, she says. So they beat the girls and dragged them away by force. Farida was raped repeatedly for 3 months. They sold me from one man to the next, she says. The ordeal was even harder for the younger ones.
There's a word we don't use a lot in the news media, but it fits here. This is evil. It was absolute evil by design. This was not a war crime that happened by accident. This is ISIS policy.
Again, excellent reporting by Richard Engel, and he is right. The news media does not like to use the word evil, but that's what the world is witnessing. Once again, Talking Points will remind you that these ISIS thugs are the same as the Nazis, who slaughtered millions of people before and during World War II. There's no difference in the mentality, none at all. And once again, the world is standing by doing little while the ISIS menace grows, spreading all over the Middle East and North Africa. President Obama is not taking the lead. His stated 60-nation coalition is invisible, and the other nations of the world are even worse. How long are these atrocities going to continue before the world unites against these savages? How long? And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight reaction. Joining us from Washington, Thomas Sanderson from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And here in New York City, Michael Weiss, author of the book ISIS Inside the Army of Terror. Am I overstating things, Mr. Weiss?
No, I don't think you are. I mean, ISIS is many things. It's a terror army. It's a totalitarian political organization, actually the upper echelons of which are outfitted by former Baathists of the Saddam Hussein regime. So your comparison with National Socialism is actually apt, because a lot of the ideology came over from that.
Now, you actually interviewed some ISIS people, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you get access to them?
So my co-author is a native Syrian. He's actually from a town called Abu Kamal, which, let's put it this way, if you're doing a book on the Mexican drug cartel, it's like being from Juarez. This is the gateway through which jihadis have moved for almost a decade, first from Syria into Iraq and now in the reverse direction. Mm-hmm. He's also from a prominent tribe in eastern Syria that has been essentially had ISIS superimposed its caliphate on top of. So we had quite a number of contacts on the ground. They're all too willing to talk to journalists. It's not true.
Were you there in person, or did you do it on the phone?
I've been to Syria. I was in there in the summer of 2012, but not to. I didn't mean
because if you're there, they can grab you. You're an American.
But when I was there, it's important to emphasize ISIS was not.
Okay. You know, how did you get them to talk? On the phone with you, or did they talk to your co-writer?
On Skype.
On Skype.
Yeah, this is how they recruit Western fighters, by the way.
So, in your opinion, they're Nazis, right? Mentality, life is cheap, they don't care, they'll do anything to anybody, right?
And there's also a political project which doesn't get talked about. The political project is one I would describe as Sunni restoration. So 2003, they feel, I mean, again, this is where the Saddamist element comes into play. They lost their power, their patronage, their prestige.
And they want to build a caliphate around the Sunnis, which means the Shias are apostate and they can kill them.
Correct.
Now, Mr. Sanderson, are you surprised that the world is standing by and watching this? Everybody knows what's going on. It's almost every day. And now we have little kids, girls as young as 8, being raped and sold and passed around to these guys who feel it's fine to do it. Boys being trained as killers when they're 7, 8, 9 years old. And the world does really nothing. There's no summit to unite against them. There's nothing. Are you surprised?
No, and let's recall a few names we probably, hopefully have not forgotten. Srebrenica, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Democratic Republic of Congo, all of these places, Liberia, where you've had child soldiers, where you've had rapes, where you've had women taken away from their families.
Yeah, but we couldn't see that. We see this. This is right there. All right, all of that, you couldn't even see it. Now it's on the internet. It's on the news every day, day in and day out. The United States is bombing, but we don't have any organized will. The 60-nation coalition's a phantom. You know, I mean, I don't understand why the world isn't saying, all right, we're all going to get together and wipe out these 50,000 people or whatever.
Well, I think the issue is once you stand up and make a statement, then people say, okay, what's the next move? And people are intimidated by the group. They're intimidated by the landscape that they'd have to go into.
Are you telling me that the United States of America is intimidated by 50,000 ISIS savages?
I'm speaking about the world in general.
Well, wait. We take the lead, though, all right? And we get the summit. And we have, all right, and this is what we're going to do. Look at NATO. NATO could wipe them out. Just NATO.
Some people may not agree with that. I mean, you'd have to actually make the commitment to put your forces in there, and then you're engaging forces on their own territory. It'd be tremendously difficult to go in there and battle ISIS, though it could be done. We would like the locals to do that, which of course is what the plan is.
So because it's difficult, we're not doing anything, and then we watch day in and day out as these atrocities take place. It reminds me very much, because there was intel to the United States before the war with Germany and Japan, that Jews and dissidents in Germany were being put in concentration camps, specifically Dachau. They knew that.
Sure.
All right, and they say, well, that's too bad. It's over there. It's not here. It's the same thing, is it not?
And look, the outsourcing of the ground campaign, particularly in Iraq, if you actually look at the forces that are fighting against ISIS, these are Iranian-built proxy groups, Shia militias that in some cases are guilty of human rights abuses that equal ISIS.
Right. And the Kurds. And the Kurds.
But I talk to the Kurds all the time, and they say, we have no intention of going into Sunni enclaves to do urban combat house by house to clear these guys out. We don't want to get involved in a Sunni Shia war. We want to
defend our turf.
We're defending our turf.
Right. So there really isn't anything now, or any organized attempt to root these guys out on the ground, and therefore they're metastasizing. They're expanding all over the place.
Correct. Look, we interviewed about a dozen past and present U.S. military commanders, military intelligence guys, whose job it was to anatomize ISIS when it was known as Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Not a single one of them told me in this book that they foresee this genie being put back in the bottle without U.S. boots on the ground.
So eventually, Mr. Sanderson, it's going to have to happen. I would imagine it's going to reach critical mass. I think President Obama wants no part of it. Probably be the next president who has to deal with it. I'll give it a last word.
Well, his hand could be forced. We could continue to see atrocities. We could continue to see expeditionary activity by ISIS where they're setting up camps in other countries. And at some point, you'd have to say, look, too many atrocities on the ground, too much of an extension by this group. It's now a core, potent threat beyond the region, and that could force us, NATO, and others in this 60-entity coalition to actually engage on the ground.
Do something about it, okay? As we watch people being slaughtered. Now, I want to recommend this book to everyone. If you want to know really what the inside story is about ISIS, it is called ISIS Inside the Army of Terror. It is by Michael Weiss. Okay, so the Factor audience is the most sophisticated intelligence audience in the world, and if you want to broaden your frame of reference about this, there is the book. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it. Next on the Rundown, Senator John McCain says he's ashamed of himself and ashamed of America. We'll tell you why. And later, Illinois police say a crime was committed off the 50 Shades of Grey situation. Is it legal on that? Upcoming.